like to start off. I'd like to ask each candidate here to go through and just give us a little description of who they are, where they came from, and what are their main priorities that they would be pursuing in their first year in the New York State Assembly. Would like to start with Rana.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I actually can't see the audience. It's very lit. But I'll just start by saying my name is Rana Abdelhamid. I am a mother. I am the child of Egyptian immigrants. I am born and raised here in Astoria, Queens, and I'm a community organizer who has been dedicated to serving this community for the past 17 years as a self-defense instructor, as a mutual aid organizer, as a tenants' rights leader, as an immigrant justice organizer. This is a community that I've been deeply invested in, have been organizing with and alongside for many, many years. And I come to organizing as the child of immigrants and as someone who grew up within a post 9/11 context and as a working class person. And I am running in this race to fight for and to make sure that our small businesses have the resources to stay open, that we have commercial rent stabilization. I'm running in this race to make sure that our working class immigrant families and our immigrant families are safe from ICE. And I'm running in this race because I believe that everyone deserves shelter and we deserve universal housing here in this district. And I am very excited and honored to be here today. And I look forward to being in communication and conversation with you all and answering any questions. Thank you.
Okay, and Mary.
Good evening, everyone. It's so hard to see, so it's difficult. I'm used to talking to people, seeing their faces. So I'm just talking to lights and feeling blinded. Thank you, Old Astoria Neighborhood Association, for organizing this event to give us opportunity to talk directly to our voters and also have the opportunity to know who we are and what we represent. My name is Mary Jobaida. I was born and raised in Bangladesh, but I come from Long Island City, close to Queensbridge, where I have been living since 2001. I come here with experiences, of living experiences in this district for over two decades and facing the same struggles over and over, never seeing them solved, no matter who is elected and who is not elected. So it has been like for a long time, our people on the ground, working class, the people who are delivery workers, construction workers, immigrants, like oftentimes we feel like we are judged by our language, our backgrounds, our accent, how we talk, how we look, what clothing we wear, instead of for who we are. I feel that we all are part of this community, part of the system, and our work matters as much as anybody else's. So it's time that when it was time to pick up the sides, I decided to fight for the working class, for the politically and economically excluded people. So I am here, I'm running for this Assembly District 36 to make sure that this district do not have people from various backgrounds and suffering in different way. Instead of like having people, each and everyone, the right to housing, right to food, right to healthcare, right to childcare, and also climate justice that we have been suffering for a long time. Like I have been living in this district, and when it rains, we are suffering on the ground. We cannot walk. The streets get flooded. Our homeowners are having water backed up in their basements. So our people in Astoria houses, in Queensbridge and Ravenswood, they are suffering from those fossil fuel industries toxic in the air. So there are things to be done for our people, since these problems are not being solved by those who are coming with empty promises. I, on behalf of my people, running for this district to make sure we solve our own problems. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Go. And Diana, yes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Diane Moreno. I'm an immigrant from Ecuador. I'm a Queens mom, and I am the Democratic Party and Working Families Party nominee running in the State Assembly to deliver on Zohran's affordability agenda, because he will need unwavering allies in Albany in order to deliver on his bold agenda of affordability, but also to fight back against the increasing authoritarian threats against our immigrant neighbors and against our democracy. I am not running as an individual. I am running as part of a movement, the same working class movement that brought Mayor Mamdani to City Hall. This is the beauty of Astoria and Long Island City in our diversity and in showing what the alternative is to a white supremacist, increasingly authoritarian federal government. My reason to run for office is to protect the future of my child that I am choosing to raise in Astoria and to protect the future of all of Queens' children. And that means running on a platform of passing universal childcare, because 2026 is the year of providing relief for young working families. The Mayor Mamdani ran in this platform. Governor Hochul has signaled her support and has already announced a historic increase in the funding for that, and we must extend it to every single corner of New York State. I am also running to protect our immigrant neighbors as an immigrant myself. And I want to push legislative solutions such as passing New York for All, the MELT Act, and representation for all, but also to ensure that our assembly office is a hub of communication, resources, and organizing so that our communities are protected. And of course, we have to tackle the housing crisis here in Astoria, a district in Long Island City, a district that is 84% tenants, by ensuring that we are passing stronger tenant protections and investing in the long term in social housing and in our public housing. Thank you.
Thank you. As we probably don't want to wake up here tomorrow morning, if possible, could you guys keep the conversation to a short little responses so that we don't hang out all night? Because I do have a series of questions, okay? Number one, these questions, I want to tell you, we chose these questions based upon issues that can be addressed in the New York State Assembly. There are issues that we're not bringing up, such as education or some zoning issues, things like that, which frankly are not the part of what the state does. They're more city-oriented. There's also federal things that we want to focus on exactly what you guys can actually do and accomplish. The first question is, and we'll start with Rana, okay. As ICE conducts enforcement actions in the district, what should the New York State Assembly do regarding cooperation, funding, and protections for residents?
Just want to start by saying that this moment that we're in is so heartbreaking. I was recently in court with one of our community members who was detained and abducted by ICE. And the court at the time literally had no reason to explain why she was abducted. And this was a grandmother, a mother in our community, who I saw in shackles in front of her granddaughter. This is the lawlessness that we're existing with today. It is important that we pass the MELT Act. It is important that we pass New York for All. That is a non-negotiable. We need to make sure that our communities are safe in the most expansive way possible. But we also have to fund legal representation for our immigrant communities. So many members of our communities, when they're showing up to court, to Federal Plaza or to immigration court, they're showing up without legal representation. And we need to make sure that there is enough funding to ensure that there is right to counsel is actually implemented. I would also like to implement a mutual aid fund. So many of our immigrant neighbors who are street vendors, for example, do not feel safe going out in public and vending or going to work because they don't know if they're going to be able to make it home the next day. Just like we passed the Excluded Workers Fund, we also need to pass a fund to make sure that if someone is unsafe working, that they actually are still able to make ends meet and still able to provide for their families, especially during such dire times. And so those are the two things, in addition to the New York for All and MELT Act, that I would also be emphasizing as a state legislature.
Thank you. Thank you. Just as a note, if you see right there, we have a timer. We're going to set the timer for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Kevin, let's give a little bit longer. And if you guys could, you see that, you'll have an idea of what we're looking at. Mary, same question.
Can you ask me the question again?
Yes. As ICE conducts enforcement actions in the district, what should the New York State Assembly do regarding cooperation, funding, and protections for residents?
I am a first-generation immigrant who came to this country as an adult. So and also in our district, we have about 38% people who are foreign-born immigrant and residing in this district. We have not seen enough representation, so we have to make sure that we have representation of immigrants. So if we keep on talking like empowering immigrant and helping immigrant, not truly supporting immigrant when it comes to show the support in their right to represent themselves, is going to be always empty talk. We have to make sure that there should not be any representation without them. So when I get elected, I will make sure that immigrants' families have all the supports needed, because I have found that support. I was made feel included. That's why I'm sitting here instead of cooking in the only job I do, cooking in the house, because I was a Bengali housewife. And when it comes to supporting immigrants, we have to make sure there's funding available for their path to immigration, for their children's education, for targeted job training, language access programs. So we have to make sure for the new immigrants who are coming to our district, we have a lot of new immigrants, and I know where they live. So we have to make sure that we keep our state separated from cooperating with the ICE, because our immigrants' families that chose to live in our district, they made home, and home should be home, not a threatening place. So we have to make sure that our new immigrant people, they're met with compassion and services and cares. They need to become productive member of our society instead of making them meet with cruelty. That will help no one. So I will support all the programs related to make, especially my office, an honest stop. First stop for any for any needs they need, like, so that they can come. The legal system available, the funding available for the program, for their path to becoming productive members, and job trainings. So I will continue to fight for the immigrants as an immigrant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good. One thing I wanted to mention, if you have questions, okay, at the end of these series of questions we're asking, you'll have a chance to ask questions. So we'll have somebody going around with a microphone. And Diane.
Thank you so much. As an immigrant born in Ecuador who moved to this country at the age of 11, I have experienced firsthand what it's like to navigate a deeply unfair immigration system that targets and marginalizes especially immigrants of color. And we have seen that the explosion of the current Department of Homeland Security under the lawless violence of ICE has really crossed a line into, we cannot say that this is a law enforcement agency. This is a lawless, violent agency that is abducting children, separating families, and abusing the human rights of our neighbors. So while I do not have the power in the state legislature to say this, I want to be very clear that my position is that ICE should be abolished, that it is a dangerous, lawless agency that our state should absolutely have no business cooperating with, which means that we absolutely must pass New York for All, because that detangles our law enforcement from having to cooperate and share sensitive information with what has been shown to be a lawless, violent agency that is willing to murder people in the open and in the streets of Minnesota. And again, with the current person in the White House, New York may be targeted next. So we have to be very serious about what's going on in our immigration system. That includes passing the MelTAC, which would unmask these rogue agents and have them stop hiding behind their masks when they abuse our neighbors, so that we can hold them accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And not only should we look at those legislative solutions, which are really important and should be immediate and should be in the priority of Governor Hochul in this upcoming legislative session, but we must also organize. We must do so, and I hope that we can count on you, every single person in this room, to look out for our neighbors. The next assembly person, which I hope will be me, should use their office as a hub of organizing to ensure that our immigrant neighbors have the resources that they need, the information that they need to keep each other safe, because our neighbors deserve to live in safety and free from fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next question has to do with housing. What specific state housing laws would you support or oppose to lower rents and prevent displacement in District 36 within the next 2 years? In doing so, what should the state prioritize? Stronger rent regulation, construction incentives, lender incentives, or a balance of all, and why? And I'll start with Diane.
Yes. As I mentioned before, I'm well aware that this district is 84% tenants. And so we must ensure that we are protecting folks and keeping them in their homes, which means ensuring that people understand their rights, using our office to ensure that there's education around current and existing tenant protections, and that folks can come to us with tenant issues so that we can hold negligent landlords accountable. And we must fight for stronger tenant protections to keep people in their homes. There are also existing affordable housing in our district that we must ensure that people can stay in. That means our 3 NYCHA developments that this district represents, Astoria Houses, Ravenswood, and Queensbridge, and of course, our co-ops, which serve as affordable housing for a lot of middle-income Astorians who, many of them are public sector workers, and they are under an unfair property taxation system that taxes them in the same way as rental properties and at higher rates than even wealthy neighborhoods in Manhattan and in other parts of the city. So we have to take a look at that, but in the long term, we must invest in social housing. Housing is a human right, and we must pass the Social Housing Development Authority in order to ensure that the state takes responsibility for housing New Yorkers, actually acquires buildings and acquires land to be able to develop that housing, to be able to change the zoning of that housing. Because we are under a housing crisis, we must pass our Social Housing Development Authority and ensure that the state takes responsibility for making sure our neighbors are housed. Thanks.
Thank you. Rana.
Every single day as I do mutual aid organizing in this district, oftentimes people come to me with this one question, which is whether they've been here 2 weeks or whether they've been here for 35 years, it's always, can we stay? Can we afford to stay here? And oftentimes as you're walking around the streets in Astoria or Long Island City, you'll see these massive luxury developments that have created a really huge issue in terms of rising the rent costs here in Astoria and Long Island City, displacing communities, displacing people. So it's very important for us to have a response that actually takes all 3 of the things that you mentioned to tackle the housing crisis, where we have 1 in 7 students who are homeless in this city, one of the wealthiest places in the world. We need to pass the REST Act, which would actually expand the number of rent-stabilized units in this city and in this state, so that not just those who are in rent-stabilized units can benefit from rent stabilization, but actually increasing that rate and the stock of rent stabilization. The other thing is we need to support legal representation for tenants. So many tenants, when they're showing up to housing court, I've been to housing court, the line is long, the lawyers are not enough. But when you show up with a lawyer, you're much more likely to be able to confront tenant harassment, landlords, and so it's really important that we fully fund right to counsel and support organizations in this district like the Astoria Tenants Association, which does such incredible work in this district. And the third thing is we need to build affordable housing, truly, deeply affordable housing. And there is a proposal right here in this district with the Western Queens Community Land Trust that would build a deeply affordable housing unit here. And so it's very important for us to fund that and build on that by decreasing the barriers to building affordable housing, creating more tax breaks for building affordable housing, creating capital funds for building affordable housing, so we actually have the units so our communities can stay and thrive in this district.
Thank you. And Mary.
Housing issue is truly deeply personal for me. Because I came to this country in 2001. That's the same year the zoning started in Long Island City. So I have seen literally my people are displaced and they had to be priced out because of the more high-rise luxury buildings we saw, the more people were displaced. So the way they were using the word housing never solved our problems. It only created only deepened the crisis. So who needs the housing? Housing is more needed by the working class, the struggling people. When they go to apply for affordable housing, they don't find any housing. In our community, especially in Long Island City sides, if you see, and now actually it infestation, like it's now expanding to Astoria side too. There are a lot of luxury houses, those that have empty apartments, and when people are struggling to find any housing at all. So we have 2 scenarios here. So when I get elected, I will make sure that we have surveys of all the empty apartments so that we can see how we can utilize those empty apartments for affordable housing. Number two, I support, we will make sure that the people who are housed, they stay in their houses. So we have to expand the rent stabilization and implement rent control for everyone. That includes our business too. And finally, like I support deeply affordable housing and social housing. We have a problem, like why we cannot have the social housing and deeply affordable housing, no, only 100% affordable housing, because the funding is unavailable. So we have to make sure as a state, we offer low-cost loans to those who are coming forward to create the affordable and social housing. And also we have the community land trust and the programs that support public land only for public use, unutilized land for only affordable housing. Those programs I will continue to support and expand. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next question, and I'm going to start with Mary again. I went a little out of order, so. And this is another housing question. What role should the New York State Assembly play when cities restrict zoning or block new housing? Should the state override local zonings in certain cases, and if so, when? And this is basically focusing on a lot of the NIMBY characteristics, particularly in the outer boroughs. People do not want to see anything built in their neighborhood, and they do their best to restrict that housing.
There is a reason. Is it me?
Yeah.
There is a reason why people are so frustrated, and I'm one of those people. Because we see the luxury developments, we consume the noise, the pollution from it, the styrofoam floating in the air, the tiny particles that is entering in our lungs. But in the meantime, when it comes to us, the people who need the housing the most, we don't qualify anyway. Even to apply for the lottery, to enter the lottery system, there is also income limit, income requirement. So when it comes to zoning, I think the accountability is the number one, and oversight that should be placed there to make sure that why we're doing it, and it is literally resonating, and it's practically solving the problems. Because how many times you can be deceived? How many times people will use our causes and just only to hurt us? So when it comes to state and city partnerships for zoning and rezoning, I am not strictly against zoning or rezoning anything here. Like, I'm here to solve our problems. So there are places where zoning is important, and there are places where zoning is a burden. So in this particular case, we cannot specifically say that, okay, we are 100% against or 100% pro, especially for when as a person who traveled the entire state, from Long Island Sound to all the way to Niagara River, the last westest end of this state. I had the opportunity to visit every places, talking to people, seeing their lives from very close. So when we implement or when we make a law, we have to make sure, because it's a state, for the entire state. So somebody's comfort is not hurting another, causing injustice to somebody else. So when it comes to this thing, I don't think that is entire state can go under one specific rules unless it's affordable housing, unless it's a social housing. It should be, I think, city-specific and place-specific. Like, we are suffering in Western New York, especially in our district, but this is not the case everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Diana.
I do think that the state does have a role in overriding zoning decisions, especially when it comes to times of crisis. And I believe that we are in one now. We are in a moment of an affordability and housing crisis that is hurting working New Yorkers. And we have to be real about the history of zoning and how zoning has been used historically as a tool for racial segregation. And it is unfortunately something that shows up in our borough, where there are outer boroughs, especially those that maintain single family housing, that are still deeply racially segregated and have given us unfortunate characters like Council Member Vicky Palladino, a deeply racist and Islamophobic council member. And I do believe that in this moment, we must rezone to ensure that housing is built, and it is built everywhere, so that working New Yorkers can stay in New York City. Again, I want to highlight my support for the Social Housing Development Act, which would give New York, the Social Housing Development Authority would give New York State the power to rezone and to acquire land, buildings, so that we can focus on building the deeply social housing that is permanently affordable that we need, and we do so with union labor. A lot of the times we come up against the questions around cost, oh, it'll cost too much. Well, that is often because we are relying on developers to tell us what we need and what and where we should develop. When the state takes responsibility for housing as a right rather than as a commodity, then we can actually make decisions based on the needs of New Yorkers. And right now, what we need is deeply affordable housing. That is why I am deep support of passing the Social Housing Development Act, and I am really proud to be endorsed by the main sponsor of that bill in the Assembly, Assembly Member Emily Gallagher. Thanks.
And Rana.
Yes, I do believe that the state has a role to play in ensuring that there is ability to rezone particular areas, especially within the context of the current moment that we're in. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was supporting a member of our community in a wheelchair to try to find housing here in Astoria. And, it was very difficult to find any housing that was accessible. Only 1% of housing stock in all of New York City is actually accessible. It makes it so difficult for people to age in place. We need to build deeply affordable housing. We need an increase in housing stock across the city. But we also need to make sure that there's something like a vacancy tax, right? That also is in this city. When we're building these luxury developments and when we're building housing that is being used to hold money rather than in a market, rather than being used to house people, we need to be able to push against that as well. And so I think that we should be able to push back against rezoning, especially when it's because of racism, because of classism, people who are anti-shelters, anti-homeless shelters, people who are anti-assisted living shelters. And we need to also make sure that there are guardrails in place to ensure that it's actually truly affordable and it's actually meeting our needs in this moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good. And keep those questions in mind for later. Okay, good. Next, and we'll start with Rana on transportation policy. Okay, this is a long question here, but focusing only on what the New York State Assembly can influence, what should the state's role be in shaping transportation in this district, including MTA bus fares and service, major projects like the Interborough Express, airport access and Port Authority coordination, and enforcement frameworks for bus lanes and other transit measures? Also, as part of this, should the Interborough Express be extended through Astoria to the Bronx rather than terminating in Jackson Heights, given the existing rail infrastructure and the Hellgate Bridge corridor?
Ooh, that is a long question. But yes, it should extend into the Bronx. I have friends in the Bronx that I would really like to see. So I would love to see an expansion of that. And then also, while we're at it, we should also extend the G train, right? I have friends in Brooklyn that I would also like to see. Our public transportation is a public good. It's what makes New York City the New York City that it is. We need to make sure that at the state level, we do a couple of things. The first thing is funding. The things that we need to renovate to make our public transportation truly and actually accessible. It should not take this long for us to get an elevator in a station. We should make sure that we're actually able to see the things that are getting passed in our lifetime. It shouldn't take 20, 25 years to extend a stop, which is oftentimes what is happening. And so driving funding to make sure that that happens is really important. And the second thing is that we, as the state, we need to make sure that the consumer, our communities, aren't bearing the brunt of these renovations and of the things that need to happen. Like, for example, if we're ensuring that our public transportation is climate resilient, which we so so deeply need to do. Every time there's rain or a storm, we see those videos all everywhere about our subway stations getting flooded. We should not be bearing the brunt of those costs. There's funding at the state level to make sure that the government is absorbing those costs that need to actually be implemented. And the third thing is, I also truly support fast and free buses. This is an opportunity. Obviously, the former assembly member Zohra Mamdani piloted that here as a representative of this district, and we have seen it across the city, and now we have the potential to also see it across the state. And so that's also something that I would fight for at the state level.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary.
Transportation is also my personal thing. No, I have been commuter. Recently, I drive too, but mostly I have been a commuter. So when it comes to transportation, we have to make sure that from the state we give them enough funding, and we are in touch with oversight to know what is going on. It's for the public, the working class people that take transportation. And when it comes to the Interborough Expressway, 100%. I have said that in 2020, I continue to say it, I say it again. Hellgate is right there, and you know it where it is. And infrastructure is already in existence. All it needs is intention, good intention, to connect it. I organized in South Bronx and Harlem, New York, Corona, Queens, and to go to those places, it took like almost like commuting to another country. Because to go to Queens from Long Island City to the eastern Queens, Ocean Park and Parkway, you have to take trains to go to Manhattan, then Brooklyn, and then go there. Almost like this one instead of going right here. So things should not be happening. This is actually a structural, this is big barriers for our working people. Losses of times. And it's a mental health issue too. When you are missing one train, and then you are lost. You have to every day go to your work to say, sorry, I'm late. And how many days you don't know. So this needs actually real people, real good intention and good faith and funding. Because we have to make sure our public transportation, the way I said earlier, if you go to Queensbridge, the tennis station, it often gets flooded. Every other day. My friends, some of you are from Queensbridge, you know it. And we face it, and it's a real problem for us. So we have to make sure the public transportation remain not only public, but also fully funded and fast and free. Because pilot program is not the only way to solve our problems. Pilot problem is just to show you, like, hey, you have got everything free, and when you go to access and real people who need help, you are excluded. You don't get it. We have to make sure when you say things, we say with good intention. So our public transportation has to be fully funded, MTA, bus, and we also have to cut and make sure that we electrify them so that we can cut on the fossil fuel that is hurting our district the most. So I am here to support public transportation and to make sure, if needed, only intention is needed. We just need to create probably extra line because Hellgate already has freight train running, the Amtrak running. We just need to, it's in existence. We just need to create probably extra line. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Diana.
All right, thank you, thank you. Yeah, we have some public transportation champions on this stage. I 100% agree that we should expand the Interborough Expressway through Astoria and to the Bronx. I also would really like to see my Bushwick friends more often instead of having to go through Manhattan to get there on a train that's falling apart. And I want for us to think about what it would mean in a city as wealthy as New York to have world-class service that is accessible and that is climate resilient. We absolutely have the money. This country and this city has the money, but we have not been investing that money. And that is because the state actually has so much power to fund and invest in our public transportation. But in the past, those funds have been used and manipulated as slush funds at the governor's whim. And of course, I'm talking here about Andrew Cuomo, who stole a lot of money from our public transportation system. Thankfully, we are in a new era where hopefully those politics are in the trash bin, but we have to make sure that they stay there. And that means that as state legislators, we have to fight to ensure that the funding, the precious funding that the state has to oversee our public transportation is actually invested in creating that climate resilient, fully accessible transportation. And that includes, of course, not just expanding on our assembly members' great program, which he started, which was Fix the MTA, which I remember going out on the subways, flyering with him to ensure that our commuters, our New Yorkers in our district knew what we were fighting for, to actually fix the system that we all depend on, and yet we see falling apart. As a new mom, I was so happy to learn that my subway station, the Broadway stop, as well as Steinway are getting an elevator. But I was like, will these be ready by the time I'm still using a stroller? Right? These improvements, much needed improvements, must be done in a timely fashion so that New Yorkers can actually enjoy them. And of course, they must include free and fast bus service that is extended in the services that it meets, because so many of our low-income New Yorkers depend on buses. Public transportation is a public good, and we must ensure that the state is investing in it, and again, that there are guardrails in the funding that we have so that it actually goes to improving those systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment I'd like to make about that, because this is a pet project that I would love to see happen. And the main problem is that Amtrak will not talk to the MTA. So there's an artificial barrier put up there, not a physical barrier, and I find that so non-productive, and I would hope that whoever is in the administration takes a seat, fights to bridge that gap, because it's badly needed. Next question.
We need to leverage our state's position for that,
Yeah.
to work with Amtrak.
Yeah.
They have to comply. If people are not supported, then what is the transportation for?
So, okay, so next, energy and climate policy, starting with Mary, okay. The federal government has delayed or paused major offshore wind projects. What role should the New York State play in defending, advancing, and supplementing renewable energy development, and what specific actions should the Assembly take?
I didn't understand the first one. I'm a person with disabilities, so I didn't understand the first
Okay,
one. I need to
it
depend on
was-
lip reading.
The federal government has delayed or paused major offshore wind projects, windmills, particularly in the ocean. This is a specific pet peeve of our president. What role should New York State play in defending, advancing, and supplementing renewable energy development in general, and what specific actions should the Assembly take?
Thank you for that, looping my climate justice back again. Because our district, my people are the ones who are suffering from this problem the most. Because we have the Ravenswood, Astoria houses, and Queensbridge, where we have those fossil fuel plants, and our people suffer from respiratory and the asthma. They have the highest rate of asthma year visit. And not only that, I told earlier that we are suffering from the climate-related, climate-resilient infrastructure issues here, because a lot of water flooded, basement flooded, street flooded, subway station. So whether a federal government is supporting or not, we have responsibilities to our people. So we have to make sure that we produce our own renewable energy. So we will have to have that. If federal government does it, we have to have bargaining issues. Do we really 100% depend on them? If federal government does not feed my child, I have to still feed my child. Because this is my children. New York State people are our children, our people. So we cannot be completely dependent on federal government. If they do not do it, still we have to take care of ourselves. And especially when you are hurting from this issue, and when it is directly impacting my district and my people. So I will support creating more renewable energy through the wind power. If you go to upstate New York, you're going to see a lot of them, the turbines, they're rolling. We have to create more, and we have to use the, from the water and all the available sources to create renewable energy so that we can meet the CPA goal, so that we can bring it to, the zero greenhouse gases by 2050, and also we can cut down at least 40% by 2030. So to meet that goal, I'll work with, when elected, if I am, hopefully, so work with other assembly members who have good in their heart for our state, and work with them to make sure that we produce more renewable energy, whether it's supported by the federal government or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Diana, yes.
Thank you. So I am really proud to be a member of New York City Democratic Socialist of America, who both times here in Astoria and in the larger city were part of a movement of climate justice here in Astoria to stop the NRG plant from being built in our backyard, because as you all probably know, we have a terrible nickname of Asthma Alley because of the disproportionate amount of, especially young children, that have asthma because of the air pollution in our community. And so we were able to stop that NRG plant through long-term organizing and building coalitions with different elected officials and other climate organizations. But unfortunately, we see these plants rear their ugly heads in other parts of the district now in Ravenswood. And we're seeing both a president that does not care about climate and is even taking over other nations to continue our dependency on fossil fuels. And unfortunately, we are seeing a lack of leadership from our own governor in this way. As I mentioned, the second project that we were leaders in was the organizing and the passage of the Build Public Renewables Act, which was a historic bill that mandated that New York build public renewables. That means renewable energy that belongs to us, belongs to the state. We have a mandate to build those public renewables, and unfortunately, there has not been leadership to implement the actual creation and implementation of that bill in a timely manner. We are in a climate crisis. There is no time to wait. It is our community, especially our working class immigrant communities, that are seeing disproportionate impacts of climate change. We have immigrants, many working class families that live in basement apartments that get flooded every time, and unfortunately this is becoming more often. We have storm events in Queens, and sometimes to deadly consequences, as we saw in Hurricane Ida in 2022. We have families that are not able, because those basement apartments are not able to be retrofitted, that they're living in danger every time that there's a storm. So we must lead on climate. I encourage you all to read this op-ed that I wrote with Claire Valdez in the Daily News about this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rana.
I think it's a shame that we have a federal government right now that is not taking the climate crisis seriously. So many of our lives are at stake. This is intertwined with what we're seeing in terms of refugee displacement, migrant displacement across the globe, and the United States not taking a leadership role in this moment, pulling back from climate accords is absolutely devastating. I grew up here in a place called Asthma Alley. I'm raising my son here. I don't want to raise him in a place called Asthma Alley. I think it's really important that we do everything within our power to make sure that our communities are climate resilient, that we're funding and pushing for renewable energy, that we're implementing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, that we're making sure that we are climate and retrofitting and making climate resilient all of our infrastructure, including our housing, including basement apartments. I remember a couple of years ago, literally when there was flooding in our communities, having to check on our neighbors who are living in basement apartments to see if they were okay. And remember a person in Queens who passed away because they were living in a basement apartment. We have to make sure that our state does not extend pipelines, is not using fracked gas, and is investing in all kinds of renewable energy, including solar, including wind. That has to be a priority for us so that our communities are safe and that we're mitigating the impacts of climate change.
Thank you. Okay. Next question, utility rates and oversight. Utility costs continue to rise for residents and small businesses. What should New York State Assembly do regarding utility rate setting, oversight of the Public Service Commission, and accountability for investor-owned utilities such as Con Ed? And we're going to be starting with Diane.
Well, you said it right there. They shouldn't be investor-owned. The public should own them. Con Ed should become a public utility because not only is this good for the planet, it is good for our pocketbooks. We just saw today that the State Public Commission approved additional hikes on our electric and our gas bills. Again, hurting working families, increasing our utility bills, and increasing the utility bills of our small businesses, which is another added burden. when we invest in making Con Ed a public utility that actually serves to make a public good like energy, something that we provide rather than a commodity to line the pockets of investors, we can actually make decisions based on the public good and based on our climate goals as opposed to what's good for Con Ed. And so I propose that we should absolutely make Con Ed a public utility, and also that we must pass the HEAT Act, which would end subsidies, wasteful subsidies on fossil fuels, and ensure that we are actually transitioning to efficient renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rana.
As someone who, again, works within the community, oftentimes people come to our office because their gas has been cut, because their electricity has been cut. Over 80,000 New Yorkers have had their gas or electricity cut over the past year. That is unacceptable. Like that, for me, especially within this climate, within our communities, within this city, which again is the wealthiest city in the entire world, our communities should not have to experience that kind of inhumanity within the context of this moment. And it is very important for us, and I agree, we should make this public. We have to pass and fight for the Public Renewables Act. It cannot be owned by a monopoly private sector entity that is at their whim. They can increase the rate and hike up the cost of electricity and gas on our communities, and we need to make sure that it is a public sector good as it is, and that means that the state needs to intervene and needs to make sure that these hikes aren't impacting our communities in this way.
Thank you. And Mary.
Energy is actually a human right, only for New York, maybe. Because you know the weather. Many of you probably check. Soon we're going to have below 10 degrees. So no one will exist without the heat. So we have to make sure that it falls under the category, especially in New York, under the category of human rights, to have access to hot water and heat available during the winter. What Con Ed is doing is very hurtful to our community. Like if you remember, any of you, like the two buildings on 36th Avenue and 29th Street suffered from lack of gas from 2021 to 2023, I believe, entirely 2 years, because Con Ed didn't fix it. And they were left with this situation for that long time. So I think as a state, we have to hold Con Ed accountable. We have to place a cap, straightforward cap. So billing should not be above certain limit. And next, of course, we have to produce public renewable energy. How we can stop Con Ed from this monopoly? That's the only way. Slowly move from dependency on Con Ed to the public renewable energy. Then Con Ed is going to lose power. When there is a competitive business, especially under public domain, then Con Ed will be bound to comply. So we have to take comprehensive and practical decision as a state to make sure that Con Ed does not play this monopoly and make our people hurt. And nowadays, as the cost of the billing goes up, Con Ed is also being very intolerant. They easily now disconnect services from people's houses. It didn't happen in the past. Con Ed at least waited, but these days, what I am hearing from our community members, they don't wait. They just go to a house, knock on door, and disconnect. That cannot happen. This is the real people, whether it's struggling, we have to make sure that we hold Con Ed accountable and we produce more renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question, and this will be with Rana. Economic development and small business. What should New York State Assembly do to support small business and the local economic development in District 36, particularly in balancing regulation, access to capital, and worker protection?
A small business is what makes Astoria what Astoria is today. I grew up in a small business. My father, who's actually here today, ran a small business in this district. And I saw how rising rent actually impacted him to be able to keep his small business open. And as someone who runs 2 community festivals in this district, I work with over 40 small businesses every single year, and I hear their concerns and conversations with the challenges that they're impacted by. It is deeply important that we pass commercial rent stabilization. It makes no sense to me that overnight a landlord can decide to increase the rent on a commercial tenant 4x, 6x, impacting their business, impacting their ability to make ends meet, keep their business afloat, keep their doors open. This is why we're seeing so many of our small business corridors actually emptied out. This is why we have names like Ghost Town, nicknaming Steinway Street, and many of our small business corridors. And so that's a primary thing that I would want to advocate for, making sure that we have commercial rent stabilization. The second thing is I'd like to make sure that our small businesses have access to grant capital. Rising tariff rates have actually impacted so many of our commercial neighbors and businesses. And when 1 month is rough, 2 months are rough, and you're not able to access a loan from a bank, that could mean you have to shut down years and years and years of building something for this community. We should be able to create access to small business loans, low strings, no interest, so that our small businesses can actually get through those difficult times. And then the last proposal that I have is a zip code-based entrepreneurship program that would promote locally owned small business per neighborhood in our community, so that we support local economy and we support local entrepreneurship in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mary.
I've also lived with a man who was a small business owner for a long time, and in this Long Island city. So I have living experience here, and I have seen since 2001, since I have been living here, our small businesses have been disappearing. Like, they cannot compete with the big corporation and chain stores. And we have to make sure, the way Rana said, they're important for our community, they're backbone of our community, and they're actually keeping our community, our money within the community, and saving us from big corporations' control over our economy. So we have to support them. What we can do is like streamlining easier path to access license and simplifying the compliance, and support to the struggling businesses, especially like low interest funding for them, and inspire more communities to open moms and pop shops and community co-op businesses within. I personally support social businesses that actually does not look forward to money instead of support and also thriving as a community, as a business both. So what I would propose is like to make sure that all of our businesses, the existing ones, they have this thing. And as a state, we can do rent control, universal rent control that also applies for businesses too. So that lots of time is the rent release, not like landlords offering rent release renewal that causing a lot of businesses to end their businesses. So we have to make sure that they do not face any injustice from any level. And on the other hand, like the small homeowners, I also support legalizing the basements and create more affordable housings through that, so that the struggling homeowners have a way of earning and the state has revenue coming, so that in this way we keep our economy circling within our community. So this is how I will be supporting, and also will work with the small businesses and work together to find more solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Diana.
Hello. Okay. Yes, our small businesses are such a rich part of what makes this a great place to live. And of course, we must fight to ensure that they stay alive and are healthy, because we have seen a lot of turnover. So many have not even recovered from the pandemic. And the pandemic was over 5 years ago, but the full economic recovery from that hasn't fully happened. So I completely agree that we must pass at the state level commercial rent stabilization to ensure that our small businesses can have some sense of stabilization whenever it comes to one of their highest expenses, which is the rent that they pay every month. I also believe in Senator Jackson's bill around a commercial vacancy tax, because we cannot have commercial landlords that are hoarding commercial properties, waiting on the big buck corporate tenants like Target, right? I was speaking to some folks ahead of this forum who mentioned, I don't want a big Target in my neighborhood. I want to support our small businesses. That is what makes our city, our district special. And so we must ensure that that commercial vacancy tax is part of the package to ensure that we're protecting our small businesses. I mentioned, of course, utilities, and I do want to go back to the fact that if we are to also save small businesses from increasing utility bills, we have to invest in public renewables. And I'm also deeply inspired by Mayor Mamdani's proposals to look at all of the different ways in which the city interacts with small businesses to end ridiculous fines and cut red tape to make it easier for businesses to thrive. That's something that we need to look at the state level as well, because there is interaction between small business and the state to ensure that we are cutting the red tape and that we are decreasing fines for small businesses. And that, of course, also includes ensuring that our smallest small businesses, our street vendors, are protected. I'm proud of the work that the City Council has done to increase vending licenses and to protect our smallest small businesses, our street vendors. And I want to make sure that the State Assembly is a hub of information to ensure that our street vendors understand their rights and that they know that they can continue to thrive in our community.
Thank you. Again, this question will start with Mary, and this is a very specific question. A lot of a common issue that you have been bringing up tonight has to do with the inability of the city to build and make construction in a timely and efficient manner. One tool that's used to try and avoid this is design build, when instead of going to 2 or 3 different bids for somebody to design a project, somebody separate to build it, in fact, you coordinate and put them all together under one management team, and it makes for a much more efficient way to construct infrastructure and things like that. So, given that, should New York State expand the use of design build or other alternative project delivery methods to speed up infrastructure and reduce costs? As an example, I've been Parks Chair of a community board for many, many years, and the latest numbers I saw to build a comfort station in a park in New York City is $6 million. So, given that, I think that what can you do in the Assembly to make the city utilize such a practice in order to make our infrastructure more efficient and, improved? And starting with Mary.
I need to know the question one more time.
Okay, what it is there's a process. When you're building a project, okay, usually you have to design the project, and then somebody has to build that design project. Historically, in New York State, other than a few things like LaGuardia Airport and the bridge on the BQE, they were built design build. So they used one company to both design it and build it, and it made for better communications and better, more efficient structure. So, but it's not utilized universally, and it's very, very rarely used in the city. So what can you do in the Assembly, if you agree with that, to facilitate the use of design build whenever a project is going to be constructed?
If I did understand it right, I'm using my common sense here, because I need to study this more. I'm honest. Running New York State is not sitting on the chair for 2 minutes thing. This is actually needs a lot of research and understanding, and so that we deeply understand what we're doing and how it is going to impact our people and the neighborhoods. So for designing, like if there definitely needs to be coordination of the people who are designing and input from the communities where it's going to be designed. For example, like at some point, I think in 2021, when the Queens Public Library was closed in Court Square, that was actually the second most used library in entire Queens. That was closed. We had $4 million redesign project in front of the Supreme Court, at the little spot. And we have many parks. I can put example here if I want to, that they were redesigned again and again in front of my eyes many times. like 4 or 5 times, using millions of dollars. So when we have other things to support, like people who are suffering from housing, people who are struggling for food accessibility, the people who are having issues with healthcare accessibility. So we had those things in place in the meantime that we are sometimes supporting, designing things, those are needed and not needed both. So I believe that there is like, if I, again, like I have to understand this thing more. This question I have to understand more because I take New York State seriously. I have to make sure that whatever we are doing it right. So it's not 2 minutes sitting on the chair and answering a question. So, but there has to be a coordination with the design people who are making the engineers, who are making the designs, and the people who are building this construction. And on top of that, the people, the neighborhood and people of the neighborhood where it is planned, how it's going to impact. Like when we had some redesigned path, it impacted a lot of homeowners, a lot of people who lived near that thing, like noise problems and then accessibility issues. And sometimes it connects, sometimes it severs the connections. So we have to, it depends. I have to study more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Diana.
So if I believe that I also am understanding correctly, this would be an added efficiency in construction projects, which are in the interest of the public, right? But I would say that my philosophy stands that if public money is invested in a project, I believe that it should go to a local contractor, and I believe that it should be built with union labor. And the reason that I'm committed to this is because as a nonprofit leader working for new immigrant community empowerment that served Jackson Heights, but also served workers all over Queens, I mostly worked with undocumented day laborers and construction workers. And while people sometimes talk about the additional cost of building something with union labor, I can tell you about the cost of building something with non-union labor, and that cost is human lives. And so it's deeply important to me as someone who is proudly endorsed by the mason tenders as well as our union carpenters that we commit ourselves in New York State. If we are going to build, we can do so in a streamlined way, and we can do so safely, ensuring that our public investments go to effective and efficient projects that are built union. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rana.
As a nonprofit leader, I'm actually working on a capital project here that is to build a shelter for gender-based violence survivors. And going through that experience, I could not agree with you more that there is such a delay in the process. There's also just so much corruption in terms of who has access to contracts. And there's so much red tape, especially when it comes to building affordably. There are huge projects that are coming our way that we're committing ourselves to at the state level, at the city level. We're committing ourselves to universal childcare, inshallah, which means we're going to have to build facilities, right, that will allow us to have this childcare. We're committing ourselves to affordable housing. That means we're going to have to build the facilities for affordable housing. It's important for us to make sure that we're doing so efficiently. And the reason why we want to do it efficiently is because we want to be as effective as possible with our public dollars. That means we need a competitive bidding process that is using design build, but is allowing for example, not contracts going to just a couple of massive contractors, but rather we have MWBEs as part of the process. We're ensuring that there's labor protections. We're ensuring that there's union labor. We're ensuring that speed does not mean quality, does not mean harm to our communities. But we do need speed. We do need efficiency. And the processes by which we can get that speed and efficiency are things that we should explore in all kinds of ways so that we can get these projects done that are so direly needed in our communities.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. This next question is for Diana, excuse me. What changes, if any, should the New York State Assembly make to state laws governing public safety and criminal justice, including courts, bail sentencing, enforcement practices, and rehabilitation? What specific laws would you seek to change, support, or oppose, and why?
Yeah, I think that we must protect the efforts and the reforms that we have made from right-wing attacks that seek to use a sensitive topic like criminal justice and public safety to derail some of the advances that we have made. And I want to say that I want to work with specifically a champion of criminal justice reform, Senator Julia Salazar, who is an endorser of our campaign, to ensure that we are treating we are lowering our prison populations and that we are treating inmates with dignity, which includes ensuring that there is timely and fair parole that passes, that the Second Look Act passes, and that we are looking at our elderly prison population so that they can have some dignity in aging. And that also means, again, that we should also resort to treatment instead of jail when necessary, when folks are suffering from substance abuse disorder, because substance abuse disorder is a public health issue and should be treated as such. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rana?
I run an anti-violence center in this district. I'm a survivor of a violent crime. I care deeply about our public safety as a black belt self-defense instructor. I've trained for the past 17 years our communities and literally how do they confront public violence. And through that work, there are a couple things that I have seen in our criminal justice system that are deeply important for me to address. The first is how our youth are impacted by the criminal justice system. We have to resist any rollbacks in raising the age. So many young people in our communities are impacted by the school to prison pipeline. We still see NYPD in our school systems when there should be counselors, when there should be care, when there should be mental health intervention, economic opportunity. If there's a young person in our community who is struggling, who is dealing with a challenge, they should be taken care of. They should be provided opportunity, not thrown away in jail and left to a system that is harmful to them and harmful to our communities long term. And then just the second thing that I will say is that as someone who works a lot with gender violence survivors, the reality here in Astoria is actually that violent crime has decreased across all measures. The only two measures where it has not is actually domestic violence and sexual violence and sexual harassment on our public streets. We need to take gender violence seriously. We need to protect members of our communities who are survivors, and those two things will be a priority for me.
Okay. And Mary?
Our criminal justice is deeply flawed because we call it criminal justice, but it's punitive. The punishment and justice cannot go side by side, like go for the same thing. What I support is a holistic approach. I support restorative justice so that we solve majority of the issues in the community. The responsible parties repair the harms and people stays within the community. Because without that, we face double injustice. Like in one way, for example, if somebody breaks your house and leaves, if that person may be punished or stay in the jail, but your house, you have to build it. And if you do not have the affordability to build that house, it remains still broken. But in restorative system, the house will have to be rebuilt and nobody should be without the house. This is how the restorative system works. I grew up in Bangladesh in a restorative system. We don't need to go to court for everything, for certain things. So what else can have us a safe public safety and great neighborhood? Not only the restorative system, but also I support preventive services, mentoring, youth programs, mental health care, and treating the root causes where the problems are beginning with. If we keep someone hungry for 3 days, that person will rob you anyway. That person will actually steal the food, no matter what. Even will take the risk of life to get access to food. I represent the working class, the excluded people, the poor people. And I come to this thing every day. Even today when I was door knocking, a sister came that a 7-year-old didn't have a birthday. The sister had to babysit the 7-year-old to let the child's father to go out to collect some money to barely bringing home some food on his birthday. We live in this community, my brothers and sisters. We talk about only the rich people. Rich people see us through their lenses. The people who come to us, sell our struggle back to us, they have zero ideas how my people are living in Queensbridge, Ravenswood, or Astoria houses. You make us so ashamed that we don't even feel comfortable enough to talk about our struggle. When it comes to criminal justice system, I prefer justice over criminalizing people more, criminalizing poverty, over victimizing people, because I believe in good in our people. So this is how we're going to create a safe neighborhood, by supporting each of our community members and treating the root causes where the problems are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question for Rana. With potential federal cuts to Medicaid and ongoing uncertainty around the Affordable Care Act, what should New York State do to ensure access to affordable, high-quality health care for residents? And in addition, what should the state do to make child care affordable and accessible throughout the district? And what would you pay for, and how would you pay for both priorities?
I mean, and still experiencing the impact of the pandemic, especially here in Queens, when those lines were long, our hospitals underfunded. We need to be prepared, and we need to pass the New York Health Act. Every single person in New York City should have access to affordable care. We cannot rely on the federal government, especially when there's so many rollbacks. We need to make sure that we have community-funded healthcare facilities, that our hospitals are fully funded. Our healthcare is a priority. It's our well-being. There are two areas of focus that I would have, and both of those are connected. As someone who just recently gave birth, I had a very difficult delivery process. It was very traumatizing. It was very dehumanizing. New York State and New York City have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in this entire country. That rate is highest for Black women, for Latino women, for brown women. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we're funding maternal health, that we're passing the Maternal Health Accountability Act so people who are giving birth actually have access to safe facilities and quality care. And that ties to quality childcare, right? We need to take care of the entire family. We need to pass universal childcare. I'm very happy that we have 2K. And as we pass universal childcare, I also really want to emphasize taking care of childcare workers who are oftentimes forgotten in this conversation. Many of the people who raised me were childcare workers. I saw the discrimination, the harassment, the low wage, the wage theft that they experience going into Manhattan to take care of other people's kids and not necessarily being taken care of themselves or having the resources they need to take care of their families. And so seeing universal childcare as an extension of early childcare, of early education, and taking care of childcare workers and also taking care of our families holistically and our healthcare, I feel like it's a robust question, but I feel like is all interconnected, and those are all things that I would fight for and prioritize.
Yeah. Thank you. Mary.
One more time. I need to hear the question again.
Sorry?
The question again.
Yes, okay. The question is, okay, with potential federal cuts to Medicaid and ongoing uncertainty around the Affordable Care Act, what should New York State do to ensure access to affordable, high-quality health care for residents? And in addition, what should the state do to make child care affordable and accessible in our district, and how would you pay for it?
Well, even before the federal government going for this cut, we have faced this discrimination here. We have some of the best healthcare institutions right in my district here. You know where they're. But when our working class struggling people go there, they're either too expensive or completely inaccessible for them. So that discrimination already existed. So how high quality healthcare we make available for everyone? Healthcare is a human right. People deserve healthcare. Because without that, one person living without treatment is a health risk for each and everyone in this state. Because we share the same transportation, our children go to the same school, we share the same public space. So it's not about one person. Nobody invites disease on their own. Nobody enjoys being sick. So we have to make sure the healthcare is available for everyone. So, and childcare. I'm a mother of 3. I raised 3 children. I had to take pauses during my education, during my jobs. I have to change jobs that I really love. But because of high childcare costs, I wasn't able to continue my job. I had to take pauses. No other parents like Diana or Rana, who are new moms, should not go through that experience under my watch. Because I have lived it. My goal is to make sure that any hardships that I encounter, should not be encountered by another person after me. This is how I lived my life and continue to live. So how are we gonna make sure the healthcare is available to everyone? During the pandemic, as Rana mentioned earlier, that people didn't go to see a doctor, but United Care had $6 billion profit. Where did it come from? We just cut those unnecessary middle person taking our money when people are suffering. We passed New York Health Act, and immediately we saved $16 billion for our state. That can support childcare too. How else we can support? If we tax only 2% the ultra-rich people, we have enough money to support the system. If we raise taxes for the corporate just to mass New Jersey, we have more than enough money for all those things that we are talking about. Whatever we're talking about, the free healthcare for all, free childcare, these are not our dream. These are doable things that we are talking about. We have had research, and it's possible to do it if we have good intention. Thank you.
Diana,
Yes,
yes.
I completely agree that healthcare is a human right, and we have right now an administration that isn't just defunding our public programs like Medicaid and rising all of our healthcare costs by decimating the Affordable Care Act. They're also decimating the labor rights of our healthcare workers. My sister is a nurse at the Veteran Affairs Hospital, and she has lost her right to organize, has lost her union because we have a union buster in chief in the White House. But even before Trump, our healthcare system in the United States has completely been broken. It is based on the private greed of corporate shareholders as opposed to the human needs of people like you and me. And Rana's right, that is part of the reason why we have a maternal health crisis, specifically in New York. Before running for office full-time, I was working for our mighty nurses union. Right now, as you all know, we are in the 11th day of a strike, a historic strike of 15,000 nurses that have walked out to demand not just a respectful wage, but safe staffing for us, for their patients. They're fighting for us, and they're out there in the cold, so I hope you join them if you can. And demanding enforceable safe staffing. What does that mean? That means that nurses should be able to tell you, I can only see 2 patients if I'm in the ICU. I can only see 5 patients if I'm in the med-surg unit, et cetera. It is the support services, our hospitals that are safety net that achieved a contract before going on strike. It is the wealthiest hospital systems that force nurses to go out on strike because of corporate greed. So I absolutely believe that we must transition to a single payer system and passing the New York Health Act to ensure that there is accessibility and that the decisions of healthcare are not based on corporate profits and closing down a maternity ward or a neonatal center to open up an orthopedic center, but it's actually based on the needs of our health. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one quick question, and then I want to go to audience questions. All of your answers today have been really focused on creating a great lifestyle for everyone. However, one question that I do have is, which is always a mitigating factor in all these solutions, is how do we pay for it? So if you put together everything that you just discussed, all these different issues, where do you see the funds coming from? Because when you're in Albany, you're going to be working on that budget, and it's going to be a whole give and take program. So what, number one, would be your priorities and where funding could be accessed, okay? And how could you make it fair and equitable? And start with, go ahead.
I mean, tax the rich. I think that yes. We need to raise corporate taxes. We need to raise taxation on the wealthiest New Yorkers. That will generate revenue for us. to be able to implement many of these programs. And I would also add, just very quickly, is that we need to weed out corruption. There is so much money out there that is given to contractors, bloated, corrupt contractors who we don't know what they're doing with that money. And so we also need to make sure that we have enforcement, we have accountability, and we have transparency for our public dollars to make sure that they're going where they need to go. So those are the two things that I would do.
Thank you. And Mary?
I do believe I answered it. Actually, already during my answer, I said that when we passed New York Health Act, right away it saved $16 billion instead of like having more money. And second thing was to tax the ultra rich. The 2% taxing them is gonna bring us enough money for even childcare. And then finally, I said like to raise the corporate tax to make equal to New Jersey. That will bring us enough money for everything that we are talking about. These three things together. Thank you.
Okay. And Diana?
Yes, as a Democratic Socialist, I very much support taxing the wealthiest New Yorkers and wealthy corporations to increase revenue to pay for the programs that I have mentioned here today. But what I would like to bring is that there is a way to do it because, yes, there will be many obstacles in Albany to get it done. Maybe even our governor, right? We will have to organize in order to get this done. And that is why I am so excited to come from the same movement that changed the political game in New York City. Because again, when Mayor Mamdani won his primary, we defeated a political dynasty. We defeated the billionaire donors that don't want for us to tax the rich. And in his victory, we saw a mandate of people hungry for a different kind of politics, of actually centering the needs of working people, not the greed of the corporate billionaire class. And that is why we must maintain and build on the movement that he built. I'm really excited that there is an organization called Our Time NYC that is continuing the organizing that he started through his campaign because we need an entire movement of engaged constituents that are going to push in order for us to be able to say, Governor Hochul, we all want this. This is why I'm actually excited to engage you all, not just hopefully in voting for me, but in getting involved in a movement that is going to push not just your local state assembly person, but all elected officials, including our governor, to know that this is a mandate to exist, again, not in a fancy lifestyle, but to have the basic necessities of human need met, which are healthcare, which are housing, which are childcare. That is what we must do. We must remain organized and continue winning until we can tax the rich. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's our series of questions. And before we start audience questions, somewhere in the glare, Alex, are you around? Alex, if you can come up here. We didn't speak about education primarily because this is really not a function of the assembly. This is more of a city function, it's under mayoral control. So we really specifically wanted to make sure that all questions were specific to the seat that they're all vying for. And so that's why we did not include education in this. Though, of course, you know, during the audience questions, if you have a question along those lines, you're free to ask. But Alex, are you available for a second? Oh, I'm looking for Alex from the facility here. Yes. Or you can come if you want.
How about the light goes back to our people?
We will. I just want to, you know, we were so kind to have a wonderful theater here, and I did want to acknowledge the people here that have provided us this wonderful venue. But it looks like he disappeared. You know what we'll do? When he comes back, we'll interject. So, Diane, do you want to grab that microphone right there? And if you have a question. Mm-hmm. Oh, Alex? Yes. Alex, can you come here for a second? I'd like to introduce, well, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Actually, I know why he don't want to introduce me. Because my last name is so Greek, it's like 16 letters. So he was like, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Because like I'm a Hostianos. Can you imagine trying? So happy to have you here. Thank you. So happy to have you here. It's a great honor for the Hellenic Cultural Center to have this debate. It's the first time that we have it here, and I look forward for the next one. I wish you the best. The Hellenic Cultural Center is only here like 40 years, and for the first 36, we've been like very into Greek. But now we open to the community here, the non-Greek community. We have a lot of Latino, Arab, Palestinian, Jewish events here. And we have different acting classes. We have a motto of learn from the best. So we have 5 times Emmy winner teaching here, acting on camera. We have well-known directors teaching here. And we have Greek dances like Opa, which I know that you're not going to get involved with that. And we have non-stop Greek, non-Greek, English, Spanish shows, music, piano nights. And thank you for being here. And I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
And thank you for providing the facility. Thank you. Okay, now we can go to questions. By the way, understand that it's very hard for us to see you because of the lighting, so we're just going to just talk into the mic.
All right. Hello. For those of you who know me, I'm Jeremy Estrada. I'm actually a part of Astoria Tenant Union, and I've also done work with Justice for All Coalition, organizing on the issues of public housing and housing as a human right. This is true throughout the entire state, but more closely true to New York City. There's an issue of gentrification that is happening throughout the city. Communities that are lower income are being pushed out by luxury rezonings. And for me, who believes that housing is a human right, I want to ask, what specifics do you believe would help most when it comes to sort of combating the gentrification that is happening within our neighborhoods?
We would ask that you, if you could address it to a specific candidate, so we know who you were looking at answering it.
Sure. Rana, sure.
I can answer that. So one of the projects that I organized around was actually Innovation Queens for that exact reason of we saw this private developer coming into our community actually harassing small business owners and homeowners in the area on the street to try to buy up blocks to develop this massive luxury development with very little promise of affordability. And it took so much organizing for us to even get like incrementally more. And I think this is why we need to invest in long-term solutions that are deeply affordable, 100% affordable housing. And so funding for our public, when I think about like how folks have been able to stay here long-term, funding for our public housing and expanding public housing, so publicly owned housing that the government will also fund so it's not deteriorating, but rather it actually has the resources to be sustained long-term, to be able to confront the reality of climate crisis and be climate resilient. These are things that are really important. This district is home to the largest public housing in all of North America, Queensbridge. We have Ravenswood, we have Astoria houses. We can build more of that. And then the second thing is the expansion of rent stabilization. So many of my elders and my community members have been able to stay in Astoria long-term because of rent stabilized units. And so we need to expand the number of rent stabilized units. And I also look forward to seeing the rent guidelines board freeze rent as well. But we definitely need more community members to be able to benefit from rent stabilization. And thank you for that question.
So it's a little known fact that people with severe mental illness are actually far less likely to be the victims of violent or to commit violent crimes than to be the victims of violent crimes. And there's a severe lack of mental health treatment in our district. I have to go all the way to Elmhurst to get mine. How would you increase the dignity in the lives of people with severe mental illness, the kind that even the clubhouses can't treat? Because the clubhouses are being championed as the solution for people with severe mental illness, but there are people whose mental illness is too severe to be taken on by them, and they are left on the street with no resources. Also, would you support Jesse's Law, which allows someone who once taken into involuntary custody as someone with a severe mental illness or who's going through a psychotic break would get to choose the hospital that they get sent to? And honestly, this question is for anyone who wants to answer it.
I could try and take that. I would have to hear the Jesse's Law part a little bit again, if that's okay. But I do want to address what you mentioned, which is the fact that many of our homeless population, our neighbors, and many of those that are suffering from mental illness do not have access to treatment, do not have access to treatment in our neighborhoods. And this is a systemic breakdown. This is not just shows, again, the failure and brokenness of our healthcare system, which does not barely even addresses the surface of mental health and also separates it from what it should be, which is part of a holistic healthcare system, but it is deeply underfunded and often hard to reach. And I do completely agree that in order to treat our neighbors with compassion, in order to address the root causes of mental health care, this is a systemic issue in which we have to tackle our healthcare system by, again, creating a public single-payer healthcare system through the passage of New York for All. And we also have to meet the immediate needs of our neighbors who are going through mental health episodes that are not a threat to public safety, but that are often criminalized as such, and they may end up in our jails. And this is deeply unfair, which is why I do support treatment, not jail, and which is why I do think that it's important to fund organizations and residential programs that are doing some of that work, some of them right here in the district. So transitional residential programs that can attend to those that are maybe experiencing an episode or are mentally ill, but they want to have that treatment and then rejoin society as they see fit. I'm not sure about the Jesse's Law part just because I don't know, I didn't really hear that part of the question. I'm going to be honest with you. I do think, sure.
It would allow someone who is involuntarily hospitalized to choose the psych ward that they go to once they've been taken into psych ward custody.
Gotcha.
Also, I was curious about, other than just getting people insurance, how you would support them and keep them safe and give them dignity.
Right. Again, under a New York Health Act single-payer system, there wouldn't be insurance because healthcare would be a human right, and that includes mental health care, right? Which again imbues you already with dignity, knowing that whether your immigration status or again what you are facing, that is your right to have healthcare. So I do want to mention there is no insurance in a single-payer healthcare system. I want to clarify that. And of course, I do think that it makes sense that someone that's going through an affliction, a deep affliction, should have some sense of choice, right, in terms of where they taken. As someone who has worked with a lot of psych ward nurses, that also means deeply funding safe staffing and ensuring that our healthcare workers are trained in order to address those issues. Thank you.
I want to talk about this issue a little bit.
Okay.
When we talk about healthcare, it includes this mental health and emotional health too. I come with first-hand experience. I had to pause in 2022 my politics because related to these emotional health issues right at home. One of my children was in partial hospitalizations and had schooling even in hospital. So I know what it means, and I know people that who have been suffering from lack of services. But I do believe that everyone deserves this service, and with right care services, people can at least find their productive path. Mental, emotional health does not affect only one person. It affects everyone. This or that way. The workplace, at home, we are mothers, we are parents, we are siblings, we are working colleagues. So it affects everyone. So for the overall quality of life and for a good society, we have to make sure mental health and emotional health services are included, as well as disability services. I myself is a partially deaf, dependent on lip reading. So when I'm elected, I will make sure that in New York State, no one should feel embarrassed, humiliated, or insulted for who they are, based on their look or disease or health issues or disability. So this is what I can say. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, that's really loud. Hi, I'm Joseph, and I'm a native New Yorker, native to Queens. I'm in the process of moving to Astoria. That's why I'm very interested in this race. I'm glad that mental health finally came up. I am a social worker. I work at a dementia research lab, and I also teach at Hunter College, social work. And I often hear in politics the need for more social workers, right? The mayor currently has a big agenda for the Office of Community Safety, and social workers are one of the largest professions in the mental health space. But what I don't hear as much in the legislature is how are we going to support social workers? For those of you that don't know, a master's level social worker makes less than a bachelor's level nurse. Nurses make, they deserve money, but so do social workers. But maybe money is not the only thing. So I'm wondering if there's any considerations you have for how to support social workers in the workforce that deal with our most vulnerable community members. That could go to anyone.
I want to. I would just want to give 15 seconds. Yes, thank you for bringing this concern. People who provide services are often the people who suffer the most. A social worker sometimes help 20 people, but they cry alone. Not only because of low wages or not just salary, but also the burden. Helping people takes toll. You are listening to everybody's problems, and sometimes it affects the person. I was a teacher. I have been a teacher, so I know that even teachers, the social workers, and then the nurses, doctors, the people who deal with other people sometimes needs the help for themselves too. So if I am elected, we have to make sure that the people who provide services like that, they're adequately receiving their compensation and also receive all the supports needed for them to stay healthy and in good health. Thank you.
Yeah. As someone who works a lot with I work a lot with survivors of gender violence, and so I work a lot with social workers, and I know that there's so many barriers even to becoming a social worker, right? There's a licensing exam, which I know there's a bill that's been introduced to eliminate that, because that creates barriers specifically for low-income communities, communities of color, to be able to access the profession, and so that's something that I'm in support of. Is someone okay? Oh. Okay. Just want to make sure. And then the other thing is that, I know there's this waiting list for certain kinds of programs, like, for example, nursing and social work programs, specifically those with scholarship and those that are free. And I think because we're increasingly having a conversation around ensuring that social work is part of the public safety realm and public safety interventions, we also need to create an easy pipeline that is free education for social workers, so they're also not riddled in debt. And
we need to see social work and treat social work the ways in which we treat other professions. Oftentimes, social work as a profession, because it's seen as a gendered profession, like educators, the rate of pay is low. Social workers are not taken care of. I have social work friends who've experienced violence on the job oftentimes, and they're not necessarily given the resources to protect themselves from a mental health perspective, from a physical perspective. And so increasing wages by strengthening union organizing within the social work space, by creating job opportunities within the government. So as first responders, instead of the NYPD coming out to support people who are having mental health crisis, and creating pathway so that if you are someone who wants to pursue a career in social work, you're not overwhelmed and ridden with debt, and you're not going through impossible testing barriers that make it difficult for you to serve the community that you want to serve. So those are the three things that I would do to make sure that it's a profession that receives the dignity that it deserves.
Before the next question, I just want to mention that we have about 14 minutes. Basically, I think we have an 8:30 hard stop. So if we continue to ask your questions, and if we could make the responses as quick as possible, that would be great, so we can get as many questions in as possible. That would be great.
Hi, my name is Elise. I've been living in the community for over 35 years. I absolutely understand the need for affordable housing and what people call social housing. I think we have an example. We have public housing. And when you talk about landlords being accountable, the city is the landlord to this public housing. And very often, the conditions in public housing are deplorable. So how will you hold the city accountable for keeping these apartments and keeping these buildings livable before you move on to something else? I believe this is your experiment. This is your chance to really see what social housing can do.
Great question.
Thank you so much for that question. Actually, New York is unique. New York City is unique in the fact that we have disproportionately more public housing available than almost anywhere in the country. But as you mentioned, there has been an unfortunate long-term neglect and divestment from that social housing that should be a source of pride, and instead is a source of headaches and a source of inhumanity and a source of indignity for so many of our NYCHA residents that face long waits to be able to get a basic service or a basic repair. And of course, while I do agree that we should be working with the city to ensure that they are accountable to what they are responsible for, and I'm really glad that I believe we have an administration that will be much easier to work with in that regard, we cannot ignore the fact that the federal government has a huge role to play here because of the funding component and how they fund and are taking away the funding from our social housing. And that includes cuts that have impacted even our Ravenswood community that used to have a food pantry open that closed due to the federal budget cuts from Donald Trump that served mostly elderly residents of Ravenswood. So we are seeing those impacts of just the most recent cuts. But people have been living with the long-term impact of divestment, attempts of privatization. And so absolutely, we must look at the ways in which we protect our existing affordable housing, which includes our NYCHA developments. And the person who represents this assembly district will have the deep responsibility and honor to represent 3 NYCHA developments. So this means a lot to me and should mean a lot to anybody running for this office because it is the responsibility of the person that represents this district. So yes, 100%, we should work in tandem with the city to ensure that they are accountable for their responsibility. But this is why we must also ensure that we are increasing revenue at the state level because the federal government is stealing from our public housing in order to line the pockets of the billionaires. Thanks.
I just want to add something to this. I don't want to ask a question. May I? It's me.
Yes.
So I know, just to add to the lady's comment. Because I'm a real estate broker and I oversee several buildings, and we need, as you say, affordable housing, I know that the city has also overlooked hundreds of affordable units that have been given to the lottery to have people placed that I know have been empty for 4 years and nobody has been placed there. So what I'm saying is, for whichever of you ladies gets voted in, this is something that you should really overlook and see, and why this is happening. Hundreds and hundreds of units are empty right now, and you're saying we don't have affordable housing. We do. There's nobody in them, though, and somebody has to overlook this, okay?
We need a vacancy.
Go ahead, Rana. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, this is why this is why we need vacancy tax as well, because there's certain incentives for some of these especially corporate landlords to keep some of this. Oh, the city government, the city. Okay, got it. Okay, got it.
I am stating because I know from we know. On the landlords. I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I thank you, and I would say that moving forward, I would hope that we do have a city administration that is weeding out that corruption, that is making sure that we are filling these vacant units. I know that just last year it was like all over the news for so long that tens of thousands of dollars were being stolen from renovations and repairs by city agencies, and so there is a lot of work to be done to make sure that corruption and that housing is being filled and it's not sitting vacant, for sure.
go ahead.
Somebody who is deeply involved in voucher houses and organizing for a long time. Already said it in my housing proposal, that what we're going to do, we're going to have a survey, like a state mandated survey of all the empty apartments, and to bring it to under affordable housing and allocating to the people who are currently looking for affordable housing. So if an apartment is sitting there for 4 months, that means like they're unable to rent it. So we are under state, we're going to do that. Because we have people to do that.
But that's not what I addressed. These units have been given from landlords that gave them up in their buildings of 20, 30, 40, 100 units. They've given 25% or 20% of those units to the city to place people there. So
But it's empty.
I don't want to answer. I'm just telling you what you should address. These units are vacant, and we are complaining about housing. They have not placed anybody there. Nobody's corrupted. I don't know why this is happening. It's negligence. But this is what you should look into. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing it. Like I will definitely work with you and find out what is going on. Looks like we probably have information gap. And then on the other side, like for NYCHA housing and the public housing, I want to address that thing because I was someone who would take a lot of tenants to the service center, and when their requests were not taken seriously. And when we went there, it was taken seriously and done within 48 hours. So we found out it's doable. Any repair maintenance should not be hanging there for months or years because it's doable. When we go there, if they do it, that means like it's doable. So in the meantime, someone asked about the public housing and nature thing. Like someone involved in the community, I can tell you that there has been a silent way of privatizing the public housing instead of creating more public housing. How it is happening? Under the name of Section 8 vouchers. I support Section 8 vouchers, but not for putting people in public housing, so slowly transfer it from Section 9 to Section 8. What I want to see is like our public housing remains public and we expand it, where the voucher programs help more people who are struggling. So yes, ready to work and expand social housing. In the meantime, we also have to place oversight to make sure that these tricky things are not happening in the name of, they are not fooling us to converting the existing social housing at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now say,
It's not only NYCHA, it's not only Section 8 voucher, it's also a lot of, like they have to invest or look for more resources, like how they can help people, because there's a lot of people that are homeless at this moment. They're looking, a lot of seniors, especially them too as well.
Thank you for speaking about this thing. Yes, it is a concern, and we all have to work together to solve it.
Good. We have 5 minutes left, so we have time for maybe 2 questions, if we can be quick with them.
Mic check. Hi. Just to cut the tension a little bit, thank you, Old Astoria Neighborhood Association, for doing this. The 3 candidates today, after hearing, I have a confident whoever wins, I think we're going to be in some decent hands. So my question is about housing. About a little bit about myself. I was born here in Queens. I was born in Long Island City area of the district, and I grew up here. And recently, I became a homeowner. I am part of the 16%, and I could tell you that it's not living.
Proud of you.
Thank you, thank you. I count my blessings, but I bring it up because I'm here to tell you that it's not really living the American dream. Because not only is it really expensive, I mean, I pay just like a lot of money now for, the loan repayments. I gotta, things like property taxes, water bill, utilities, things like that. It's a real burden financially, and also quality of life, especially, by Dutch Kills area. That's, so much construction's happening. As a homeowner, it's crazy to, see the dangerous situations with trucks and contractors and their trucks just going everywhere, throwing trash, because they're tearing down the buildings. There's so many rats that just come out of nowhere, and they're huge. So that's a health problem too, and it just keeps happening. And to be honest with you, I cannot recommend anyone to be a homeowner in the district, and it sucks. I understand a lot of people are tenants. I was a tenant, before, and I understand it was. My question is, what are you doing? What will you do, policy-wise, to help a homeowner like myself in the district, easing the pain either financially or improving the quality of life and some of the challenges that we have to face and the responsibilities that we have to do? Because, I'm all for it, but what will you do? What is exactly the policy that you'll push for in Albany, or you'll work with other elected officials in the area? So thank you.
Could each one of you briefly
Either
answer
of
this
them.
question, and then this would be our last question because we're coming up on 8:30. But I'd like to each of you address this, and then.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we have to get private equity out of buying up our houses, and we have done some work in ensuring that Airbnb is kicked out of New York City, but they will rear their ugly head if we give them the chance, right? So we must ensure that we are keeping the prices of housing, first of all, for homeowners, and not for private equity speculators or big developers that are going to hike up the house of prices and make it even more out of reach than it is right now, which it feels like an impossible dream for so many of us as it is, right? And of course, for those middle-income co-op owners of homeowners, we do have to ensure that we're looking at incentives, whether it's tax incentives or others, to, for example, help people retrofit their existing homes to make them climate resilient. That's something that we can continue to do and expand on, because there are some tax incentives that are going to be expiring this year. And as I mentioned before, I do also believe that our Queensview North co-op owners, who, again, many of them have invested in ensuring that they have a piece of that co-op, and they're investing back in their co-op to ensure that it's livable, that they have a fair property tax system that is not taxing them at a higher level than a rich, wealthy co-op owner in Park Slope. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing the homeowner issues. It's been a while that homeowners are treated like evil. The drivers are treated like evil. Seems like they did a crime by using their last money to invest in owning a house, which we consider American dream. Recently, I had a meeting with homeowners, and they said, Mary, we do not do business with our homes. We live in our home. Whether our $200,000 home is bringing $1,500,000, It's not helping us. Rather, it just increases our taxes and making us, we are not high earning people. We just at some point were able to buy a house. Now we are struggling. Lot of homeowners are so tax burdened that they were bound to sell up their house and become renter again. We don't want to see that happen because our homeowners are our backbone. They're keeping our land away from the greedy profiteers like the developers. They are actually saving our lands. So what we are proposing here, after talking to those homeowners, and I'm open to have more discussions, because problems should be solved from the people who are suffering, so we know where the problem exists and how to solve it. So as far as my knowledge goes, I am supporting restorative justice, not only for the criminal justice thing and everything, just system. So for example, if there is any issue, homeowner and tenant issues, we're gonna see. If this is related from hardships and struggle, then state will be helping both homeowners and the tenants. So if there is any issue related to negligence, then the responsible parties should repair the harm. So this is how it goes. And for the struggling homeowners, there should be money available. This is one of the things on my palm court. We are going to support struggling businesses and local businesses and struggling homeowners. So if there is any struggle, homeowners should have access to low interest loans. And also, we need to see how we can decrease the taxes. It should not be the homeowner's burden to run everything. So finally, I support legalizing basements. So for any struggling homeowners, they will have the opportunity with the safety upgrade and flood resiliency so that they can do the legalized basement to rent so that they can earn a little revenue to decrease the hardship a little bit. And the meantime, state will also benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the main pieces of focus that I have is really trying to lower that monthly payment that a new homeowner would be burdened with. Obviously, interest rates, which you probably are feeling real hard right now, are really high. We are not in pre-pandemic interest rate world, and it makes it very difficult for anyone, especially first-time homeowners, to actually be able to sustain that monthly payment. And I think there's two interventions at the state level that could be used to decrease that monthly payment and make it easier for people, both up front, but also over the long term to stay in their homes. The first is really reimagining our tax system. And I really appreciate that Diana brought up the tax system and the burden that it has on co-op owners. I got to meet some co-op owners in the district who talked to me about that and educated me about how the taxation process actually forces many of them to move out of their homes when they're later in life and they can't age in place. And that's the same situation that we're seeing with some of our homeowners as well. And so lessening that tax burden is a priority for me. And the second thing is helping with that cash upfront payment when you're putting down 20% or you're putting down, instead of, a lot of times first-time homeowners, you can put 5% down. But what that means is you're paying more every month. And so helping up front with cash assistance, specifically for those who are trying to buy homes in areas where there's an increasing rate of displacement, helps decrease your payment every month over the long term. And you could actually stay in your home and there isn't difficulties in being in facing with that payment because you paid so little up front. And so those are the two things, is a capital grant program and really reimagining our tax structure for homeowners and co-op owners.
Thank you. Before we go, I want to acknowledge a few people. I'd like to start with our treasurer, Diane Kantzoglou, also a questioner and carrier of the mic around the hall. So I say hello. And also our timer and vice president, Kevin Hernandez. Also our videographer and volunteer, and Victor Prado. In the back, we have Mark Goldberg and Wendy Herrera, who helped us with the checking people in and some photography. And our sound engineer, Stefanos Charalambous, if I got that right. And again, everyone, this Saturday, early voting starts, so get down to your site, check out the Board of Elections and go to their site. They can tell you where to go. And then February 3rd is the actual vote. You should have received stuff in the mail regarding that. I know that some of the early voting has changed because the Variety Boys and Girls Club has closed, so.
Sonic Temple.
Yep, now I'm moving
If
to
you
the
are not-
Masonic
yeah,
Temple
if
on
you
30th. Get out there and vote, get your friends to vote. This is what's gonna keep America strong. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm Richard Kazami. I hope you appreciate it and look forward to the next time.